Hello, everybody, and welcome to our adult Sabbath School lesson. We're going to be dipping a little bit into lesson 5, talking about God's divine wrath. Today, I'm joined with Edward, Pastor Sasha, and my name is Monique. And to kick us off, I've got a little bit of a question for Pastor Sasha. So, it's very easy to find the human definition of wrath. I've kind of gotten an idea from the dictionary that it's an effective or persuasive speaking tool. It's a bit of a rhetorical word, not necessarily something to be taken literally. But could you tell us a little bit about the biblical definition of wrath?
Interesting. They define the wrath differently than anger.
Oh, yeah. Anger wasn't even in the thing. I mean, like, if I were to actually open the dictionary, I'd have a couple of options, but the number one option, it was a rhetorical or persuasive literary device.
Oh, very interesting, very interesting. Because I always thought that wrath and anger, it's basically the same thing.
Kind of, yeah. I got the same idea that maybe wrath was more like the physical sense of the word, the action, and anger was probably more the internalized
Maybe.
way to understand it.
Anyway, because I think wrath is more of a kind of a little bit antiquated word.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of ancient. I don't even really find it in like an NKJV all that often.
Yeah, yeah. But in the Bible, you have a human wrath and divine wrath, and they're expressed in different words.
Okay.
So human wrath is like, Hebrew kas is like, or, somebody's burning hot, something like, that's if somebody's feeling angry, the temperature goes up, the pressure goes up, right?
So you're saying there are different Hebrew words?
Yes.
Okay, in the
yes.
Hebrew Bible. Okay, I got you.
In the Hebrew Bible, there are different words. But when it comes to the divine wrath, it's always expressed in a very interesting way. The wrath of God, literally, if you read it word by word in Hebrew, it's like it's God's nose.
His nose?
Yeah.
Like on his face?
Yeah.
Or his nose? Okay.
Nose.
Okay, got you. It's like, that has to be a me problem, but no, it is nose.
Well,
okay.
It's very unusual, huh?
It is very unusual.
Because the thinking behind it, when, some scholars try to parse why the wrath of God is always connected with nose, and they came to conclusion that when God is angry, it's like his nose gets red, or maybe just the face gets red.
Okay, so then, two things off of that. I hope this doesn't take us too far off course. So, one, do you agree with that conclusion? And two, when they're using the Hebrew word for like God's wrath, is it in books of prophecy, or is it more in law, books of like the law? Is it like, where in the Bible are they finding this specific word when describing God's wrath?
Everywhere it starts. I just looked it up, and for example, when you look, let's read Exodus chapter 34, and let's read verse 6.
Because I'm trying to understand if it's something that like God has imparted on us, mankind, to be like, this is what I mean, or is it just like somebody sat there and were like, oh no, this makes sense to me, so this is what I'm gonna call it. So let's see if Exodus has the answer.
And he passed in front of Moses, proclaiming, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness.
Okay, so you see the slow to anger? Literally it says, with a long nose. So there are different people with different tempers.
Okay.
So some people, and there are different cultures with different tempers. It's basically acceptable to think, and may not be correct, that someone from, Scandinavia is kind of more reserved and maybe not as vocal, where I know For example, I don't know much about Italians, but everybody says that Italians are very expressive. But I know Israelis, and Israelis would like this.
Yeah.
Like, just put a spark and a match is there.
I love it. I feel like now that you mention it, I can kind of pick certain people that are from different parts of the world that definitely, there's a difference. There's a real difference.
Cultural difference.
Cultural
It's
difference.
like, look, while we were talking about this and you were a bit surprised about the nose, but we have English expression, short fuse.
Right. So now I'm trying to just equate the nose is the fuse here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You may think about this, but what it shows that, there is an important point here. What it shows here in God's attributes that He is slow to anger is basically when they describe nose and a redness and stuff like this, the redness of face could be an indication of just a stress. So when God is, it's not like God has a short fuse or God needs anger management, but definitely when He sees things going on, it is definitely stressing Him out. The question is, what is God doing when it is, when He is expressing His wrath? And the Bible is very interestingly depicting how it works with God. Let's take a look at some of the interesting examples.
So then do you agree though with the decision that it's definitely talking about his nose, his face, his stress level. Like, I still can't really get my head to understand it. Like, I'm just kind of accepting it and moving on. But how do you really just sit there and be like, yeah, anger is his nose. That makes sense. Like, how did you get there?
Well, again, this is the same way as we have idiomatic expression in English, short fuse. And why do we say short fuse? What does it indicate? Remember the Angry Bird?
Like the game on the phone?
No, the cartoon, the original story. Remember, they had an anger management class.
Okay.
And there was this guy with big bird, red, and he had a nickname, the Bomb. And
what cartoon are you talking about? I'm trying to think. It's like Looney Tunes, but you have yet to say Elmer Fudd.
I don't know.
Yeah, neither do I. Is it like a Looney Tunes thing?
No, it's Angry Birds.
Is it in America?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm too young.
Well, you have to get some lessons about this from Jacob.
Okay. Okay.
But the game, the phone game is coming from this story.
It really is
okay.
Angry Birds. Okay, they did make a cartoon. Okay, now I know what you're talking about. Okay, so the whole thing about the fuse, it's the spark is coming down until the fuse is all finished, and then boom, the big bomb, the blowout, the whole angry
Yeah, so when somebody is a short fuse,
it doesn't take much.
Any little thing, that's where, you got to have an anger management, and it's all kinds of things, but just because people are like this. But with God, He expresses it differently.
I'm thinking of it now as a thermometer. So it starts at the bottom of the nose, and as it gets hotter and hotter and hotter, it rises to the top until it's finally out of space. Okay, I think I can accept it, and we can move on.
Yes. All right. So basically, how does God? There are many different ways God expressing His wrath, which is very different than what the human anger is expressed. So let's take a read. Judges chapter 2, verse 14.
In his anger against Israel, the Lord handed them over to raiders who plundered them. He sold them to their enemies all around, whom they were no longer able to resist.
So, how these things happen? Did God specifically send those raiders, or what is happening here?
To me, it looks like the natural consequences
Yeah,
of their
exactly.
actions.
Natural consequences of what specifically? Let's take a look. What we see in this Old Testament texts is actually known as the result of the break in the covenant. And when we look in Leviticus chapter 26, we have, certain situations where God is talking about, if you keep my covenant, that's going to be the consequence. If you forsake my relationship, with you, then there will be other consequences. Take a look at this. First, let's look Leviticus 26, verse 3.
Leviticus chapter 26, verse 3. If you follow my decrees and are careful to obey my commands, I will send you rain in its season, and the ground will yield its crops, and the trees of the field their fruit.
Yeah, and follow this. Let's go to verses 6 and 7.
I will grant peace in the land, and you will lie down, and no one will make you afraid. I will remove savage beasts from the land, and the sword will not pass through your country. You will pursue your enemies, and they will fall by the sword before you.
So, as you can see, God promises if people will be staying in a relationship with Him, they will keep the covenant. Then one of the blessings of the covenant is the enemies aren't gonna come, and there will be peace. And if the enemies come, they'll flee. Mm-hmm. But as we look at an example is the book of Judges, we see constantly the same pattern that Israel rejected God, and God just lift up His guard, His protection. So, then of course the enemies are coming.
So I'm kind of understanding it, what you're saying, but also like more ideas coming to my mind in the sense that He's made them a great nation. So obviously they're going to have some people that are jealous. They're going to have some people that are going to want what they have. And especially when they've kind of had this history of like triumph by conquest, like they're going to have a couple of enemies to worry about. Like the Bible says, like they will have enemies. It's not like, oh, God is like, yeah, stirring the pot and being like, oh, look over there. Like, see those people. Like He's definitely not stirring the pot in that way. They're going to have enemies just because they're a great nation. So like, it kind of seems to me that His wrath is like taking over in a place where it usually would have been mercy or grace, where He was having grace for them, being like, okay, you have enemies, but you don't even have to worry about them. Now, since they're kind of stepping outside of that covenant, He's like, okay, now you've got things to worry about, kind of taking out that grace and that mercy and replacing it with wrath instead.
Yeah, basically, you need my help?
Right.
I'll be helping you. But what actually happens is this, and we can see in the Old Testament the picture. They, when we look at the land of Canaan, the land of Canaan doesn't have much of a rivers or anything. So the land itself depends on rains to produce crops. And in this situation, what pagan people do, they usually have, some myth about some god whom they have to pray and appease so that he would send the rain. This is called the fertility cult. Unfortunately, the fertility cult is not like, oh, we choose this god Baal, which is in the case Baal in that region of Western Mediterranean was the god which was responsible for crops and fertility, and because he was the master of the rain and thunder. He had. Since all these type of cults, gods are very humanized there, so these deities are humanized, and so they have, Baal had the wife. Her name was Ashtoreth. So the big problem was that all these fertility cult, which was practiced in Canaan, it was very sexualized. In other words, they believed that in order to produce the rain, they have to publicly have sex, and this is what they were doing. Huh?
No, it's actually sick and freakish.
That's insane.
Yeah, this is exactly what they were doing, and this is exactly why God told Israelites, when I lead you to the land of Canaan, make sure you drive all these people out, because if they don't, which they didn't in this case, next thing is, here's an Israelite village, and here is this Canaanite village. And guess what? Here's the mountain, Israelites are on the top of the mountain, and here's down on the bottom, there is this sacred garden where all this stuff is going on, wine and sex. And here is the teenagers running around. What are they going to try to do? They're going to sneak out from their parents and go there to have fun. So it was a very, very dangerous situation, and that's why God was each action of God is to protect His people. So He told, not do this, not be engaged in this stuff, because I am the source of your blessing. But unfortunately, well, as it happened, and we read in the book of Judges, you got, the generation of Joshua. Joshua, they were faithful, but their kids were not. So their kids would kind of were this generation that snuck out to participate in these cults. And by the time they had their own kids, they even don't know who God is. Their head is full of this stuff which their Canaanites neighbors taught them. So they don't know how to worship God. They don't know how to have a relationship with God. And so God is out of the picture. And so that's one, and God takes away protection and let them experience the consequences of their choices. And so when you look, for example, in the New Testament, take a look at Romans chapter 1, verse 18.
The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of men who suppress the truth by their wickedness.
So here is another example of how God's wrath is manifested. So let's keep reading and see what the issue is. Let's read verses 21 through 24.
For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse. For although they knew God, they neither glorified Him as God nor gave thanks to Him, but their thinking became futile and their foolish hearts were darkened.
Okay, and what God did, verse 24.
Verse 24. Therefore God gave them over in the sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity, for the degrading of their bodies with one another.
So, as you can see again, what does God do in his wrath?
Gives up.
Yeah. I mean, like, what else would you do with someone who doesn't want anything to do with you?
Right. God can't force himself on you. It's your choice.
Yeah. That's right. So basically, you don't want, in other words, that's the difference between God's wrath and human anger. So human anger is usually expressed in, bursts of tempers, right?
In
One of
force.
the-
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But God's wrath is usually, and this is why he is slow. It's not like he has a long fuse.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, people with a short fuse will blow up right away. If somebody has a long fuse, will eventually blow up eventually.
Right.
God is not about blowing up. When God is slow to wrath, what it means, he will be patiently waiting and waiting and waiting until we change. But eventually, he will let the consequences run their course.
So I'm curious how that will relate then to Moses on Mount Sinai when he was just like, hey, Moses, look at your people. They're kind of having a crazy time. I can get rid of them, start all over. And I know that you had a little bit of a question about that as well, if you want to go into more detail.
Yeah, so God initially wanted to wipe out the Israelites because they just betrayed him and didn't listen to him. But Moses kind of stopped that. Was that a test to Moses, or was that actually Moses convincing God to not kill them?
Sometimes we take it out of context. So let's read first Exodus 32, verses 30 through 34.
Okay. The next day Moses said to the people, "You have committed a great sin, but now I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make atonement for your sin." So Moses went back to the Lord and said, "Oh, what a great sin these people have committed. They have made themselves gods of gold. But now, please forgive their sin. But if not, then blot me out of the book you have written." The Lord replied to Moses, "Whoever has sinned against me, I will blot out of my book. Now go, lead the people to the place I spoke of, and my angel will go before you. However, when the time comes for me to punish, I will punish them for their sin."
Yeah, so basically we have two cases here. That's the one case when Moses pleads for the people. But as you can see, this is called he's making atonement. Making atonement is basically here. He is doing an intercessory ministry for them. But what happens before, when the people of Israel do the golden calf, Moses comes in and they basically execute those who instigated this, because Aaron explained, the group of people came to me. I was afraid of them. They told me to do it. So it was actually a very serious matter. It wasn't like the whole people, 2 million, did it. But they kind of describe it in a very bit complicated way in the chapter. But in essence, what happens, God commanded to eliminate those who, to execute those who were instigators of this golden calf. Why God is doing it? Again, the same way when God says, drive out the Canaanites, execute those who are, instigating all this rebellion. he's protecting, first of all, the innocent. It's not like he's taking pleasure. Of course, he's not, but it's not like he's blowing up in anger on those who are the sinners. No, what God is doing, and again, when it's kind of a deep question, but in essence, you have a sinner, and then you have a person who is acting in intent, and often the intent is to dissuade other people from God, put them in a dangerous position. What happened basically, when they left Egypt, everybody was crying, "Oh, we're slaves, let go." But when they crossed the Red Sea, they ended up in a desert. There was different conditions and all of this, and some people began not just whine that it was difficult, but they began to incite others, because usually you deal with, the tribal chiefs. There were certain tribal chiefs, and they instigate others to, let's make a insurrection and go back to Egypt. God knows what's going to happen if they go back to Egypt.
Okay, so then I'm kind of curious. I feel like I want to really cling to what happened a little bit before that in the same chapter. Now, therefore, let me alone, and this is God speaking to Moses, therefore, let me alone, that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them, and I will make of you a great nation. Then Moses pleaded with the Lord his God and said, Lord, why does your wrath burn hot against your people, whom you have brought out of the land of Egypt with great power and with a mighty hand? And then he spends 12 and 13 kind of trying to jog his memory about all the things that he's done for them in the past, and it shouldn't all go to waste. And then in 14, so the Lord relented from the harm which he said he would do to his people. So then, did he not really relent? It's like he just kind of changed the format and the timing, or what is that kind of saying?
So, yeah, this is a very interesting question, and especially verse 14. Mm-hmm. Because when you hear the word relent, what does it mean to you?
Like he took a step back, let off the gas, took a breather, changed his mind, kind of a thing.
Change his mind.
Kind of relent. Maybe it's like I have to sit here and think a little bit, but that's kind of the easiest way I can put it, for lack of better words right now. Just he kind of changed his mind, or, changed his approach. He was going to go for the full punch, but he chose to gentle tap on the shoulder instead. Okay.
That's a very important to notice the difference. The same way as we talked about the wrath of God,
right,
and the anger of man, it's totally different things. Mm-hmm. So this is a very, very interesting word here. It says in the original Hebrew is, they use the word nacham. So basically, nacham means it's like God had pain in his heart. Mm-hmm. So it's not like God was about to kill everybody.
Right.
And then Moses pled. And then basically God, because you're pleading to me, I'm going to change it. God experienced, when God saw that these people made this golden calf, it was very painful. And in Hebrew it says it was very painful to God for the evil which was to happen. So let's go back to see what specifically is going on. So what is happening is you have the people, and mainly you have the majority complied with the desire of those who came to Aaron and made this golden calf. And so it says in verse 6, let's read verse 6.
Exodus 32, verse 6. So the next day the people rose early and sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. Afterward they sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry.
The moment they just said, few days before that, 40 days before that, they listened to the words and they said, all what God said we will do. Mm-hmm. And 40 days passed, and God is looking at the situation, and definitely he is, he is in pain because of what is happening. And so God says to Moses, hey, maybe I will do this this kind of new people from you. The main argument that Moses did, and that's what is a part of the atonement that Moses is doing, and how Moses is, it's been definitely a test of Moses.
Okay.
It's been a test for Moses, because what Moses bring to God in the response is, if they die in this desert now, what will Egyptians say? And what kind of character of God will be demonstrated to all other people? Mm-hmm. And that's what, in a way, that's what God wanted to hear.
Okay.
That's what God wanted to hear, because in this particular speech of Moses, mm-hmm. Basically, they built their relationships. Remember a similar case with Abraham, mm-hmm. when God came and said to Abraham in Genesis chapter 8, in Genesis chapter 19. Genesis chapter 18. So take a look, very similar situation. 18 verse 20 and 21.
Then the Lord said, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great and their sin so grievous that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will know.
So, this is what God says to Abraham, and what Abraham is doing, verses 23 and 24.
Then Abraham approached him and said, will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Will you really sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous people in it?
And verse 25 goes with it.
Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, treating the righteous and the wicked alike. Far be it from you. Will not the judge of all the earth do right?
So it's kind of giving them an opportunity to reaffirm who God is to them.
Yes.
Not only, okay.
Yeah, that's so. So you see very similar. Twice God says to Moses, I will wipe these people away. Mm-hmm. And twice Moses replies a very similar way. How will everybody else see your character?
Mm-hmm. So it's not really a challenge, but it's just like an opportunity for Moses to have faith.
Very often God speaks with, as we see Abraham, we see Moses, God speaks with them in a kind of style of a debate,
Okay. That's where that rhetoric, I think, is kind of coming in with the human definition. It's just kind of like an opportunity to have a little bit of a banter and more of a discussion.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. That's exactly. And the fact that God allows Moses to say no, mm-hmm. It's he sees Moses as a partner. And both Abraham is called the friend of God, And Moses is called the friend of God because they were discussing this issue.
Okay, got you. So that gives us a lot of kind of new material to think about when we're thinking about these stories that we've read over and over again, but we have a new light now to see them under. So I hope all of you can see the same picture. And if you see a different picture, please let us know down in the comments what these discussions and what these stories now mean to you. Please share the video with somebody who might even have a different opinion, and just keep the conversation going. Like and subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification so we don't miss you next time. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.